one of those problems that individually, each time it happens, seems almost inconsequential, but cumulatively can have the most enormous impact on cities, towns, and suburbs generally. I hope that you've all read this report from the Royal Horticultural Society, which is, I think, quite ungrammatically entitled Why We All Need Greening Great Britain. And the idea is that with each front garden that's paved over, we increase the potential for disaster when it comes to flooding and various other problems that we all do already face. I think personally we have to ask ourselves if we can afford the fact that 3 million front gardens in the UK are now paved over. That's 3 times more than there were 10 years ago. And in this report, it does highlight that trend, and it explains some ways to put it right. Now, yesterday at Mayor's Question Time at City Hall, Boris Johnson said it was a sad phenomenon that so many front gardens are being concreted over. And when I asked him to back my call for a comprehensive review of the planning rules relating to front gardens, he said he was receptive to further discussions. I have no idea what that means, but I'm going to try and push it forward. And I would like to say as well that obviously people who are engaging in this debate today will be lobbied, I imagine fairly seriously, by the Royal Horticultural Society, because quite honestly it is something that we should all be concerned about, particularly because most of us are resident in London at some point in our lives. Now, this has happened because the paving over front gardens has happened because people are increasingly turning their front gardens into car parks, or they're paving them over to cut garden maintenance because everybody now is short of time and short of energy. And so while they're solving what they perceive to be one set of problems, i.e. lack of time or space to park their car, they are in fact creating a multitude of new problems that we as public servants have to be aware of and take responsibility for. The fact is that it's inadequate planning laws that are allowing this to happen. After the 2007 floods, the government quite rightly, in 2008, changed planning laws to encourage the use of permeable materials in front gardens to prevent surface water runoff. Now that seemed like a really good idea. Well, it was a good idea. But when you consider that half of London's front gardens have disappeared since then under paving or tarmac, that's a 36% increase in 10 years. It's obvious that planning laws are not working. And I would argue that now they're actually increasing the risk of local flooding. In addition, the general permitted development planning rules for front gardens don't put any sort of value on protecting wildlife, on supporting wildlife habitats, on reducing our urban heat island effect, or from trapping pollution from roadside vehicles. The fact is that plants, particularly trees, hold a lot of the soot, particularly from diesel vehicles, which everybody will know is a real problem in most of our cities, and of course with all sorts of concomitant health problems for the general population, but particularly for children and for adults with any sort of lung problem. And quite honestly, it's a missed opportunity. If we don't use plants to better our lives, the quality of our lives, of our urban environments, we are missing opportunities for improvement. My argument is that we need to tip the balance of legislation now in favour of front gardens dominated by rain gardens, by open deep flower beds, by lawns and open green spaces, and to actually discourage paving of any kind. And if we do have it, it really ought to be permeable and kept to an absolute minimum, because even the permeable doesn't allow for very, very heavy rainstorms. The fact is, no paving is actually preferable. And contributing to an urban heat island effect, hard surfaces can soak up the heat during the day, particularly this time of year obviously, and then they release it at night. Now, increasing paving means we're exacerbating that heat island effect. That heat island effect means that our nights are much, much warmer. It means that people don't sleep as well, and it increases heat stress for people? Well, actually for people and for animals. It means that cities like ours, London for example, is already 10 degrees hotter than the surrounding green belt on summer nights. Now you see, a lot of these things I'm describing don't seem that bad. Well, warmer, we all like warmer, but the fact is it does increase a lot of problems for people. There's also the fact that paving over areas is accelerating the loss of wildlife and habitat. So it's not only us that suffer, it's not just our health and well-being, it's also animals. And many of us do, of course, keep domestic pets. But it's the insects that we need, it's bird life, it's every sort of animal, and probably foxes, it's every sort of animal that we care about. 60% of the UK wildlife species and natural habitats are already in decline. This is even before we take into the impact that we're having. And losing 3 million front gardens to concrete or tarmac means that there are far fewer places for birds to nest and insects to feed. Personally, I think there's a very, very strong case and appetite for change, but until now I think the cumulative effects have not really been recognised in the way that this report describes. It is one of those issues, I think, that we can adopt cross-party, that every single party could sign up to, because it is, in essence, common sense to protect ourselves from future problems. Obviously, with my political party, we try to look ahead and we try to actually solve the problems before they happen, i.e. not to allow them to happen at all. And it is wonderful that an august body like the Royal Horticultural Society have actually done this. They do not talk about changing the regulation. They are actually talking about some practical solutions that people can do. For example, using gravel or permeable surfaces. Also with some planting ideas, plants that are particularly good at pushing down so that when the rain hits the earth it can go much deeper. But quite honestly, these wonderful voluntary ideas are simply not enough, and I feel it's time now that the government of the day took an initiative on this and did something quite simple and actually stopped people from using impermeable paving on their gardens. Thank you.